Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Hoggie Shuffle podcast. You got co-host Preston here, my co-host Robbie, and today's a little different. We got a guest today.
Who we got?
So today I want to introduce him. This is Austin Dunbar.
How's it going?
3-year University offensive lineman. Absolute dog. Someone I had the pleasure of playing with. Someone you had the pleasure of coaching, actually.
I sure did. Beast.
You know, I say it like this. It's a big deal. We got the road grader himself right here. Okay, you know.
Hey. We're not famous, so you're the most famous lineman we know.
Hey, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's this is the first guest we ever had in the podcast. You know, it means a lot to me that we get to have a close personal friend of mine on here that, you know, absolutely was a bowling ball when he played. He was a road grader.
Yeah, we did good things, won some championships, and went to some senior teams, and went to U of A and did some great things there, and made a guy proud. Now he's back coaching with the boys.
We're going to do a good interview here in a minute, but I wanted to recap here from last week, you know, talk about the things we did there. We were talking about some young offensive line guys, had the rookie tips, you know. We had some the Great Wall of Detroit, so if you do want to check out last episode, it was a great one as well, too. This week, we're going to go over, again, some young offensive line guys. Every week until the season starts, we want to, you know, pick a few offensive line dudes, a couple young guys, a couple rookies, a couple guys that are just, you know, up-and-coming guys, getting their bearings going, you know, really wanting to see success with the O-line dudes.
Yeah, definitely got some stuff in there, so we can talk about the Tush Push. Definitely did some research into that this week. A lot of crybabies out there. They're not liking it. They're not, you know, they're saying, hey, guys, we're not good enough. We can't defend this. It's the only football play in history that nobody could defend. So we'll get back into that a little bit more. I don't want to break that all down now. All right. I want to talk about Zach Martin, Torrey Smith retiring, like two of the greatest ever to play the game, two of the meanest, dirtiest. I mean, in my eyes, Tyron Smith, I mean, left tackle, like number 77. You'll never forget playing that guy. Never.
We're going to talk about O-line code, you know, what makes a good offensive lineman. Just the little things that we can see as coaches and players out there when we know, you know, what it has to take, especially getting some experience from a higher-end offensive line guy that really knows his stuff. You know, he's seen guys at the higher level than I have, than you have. You know, he's seen it all. Like, there's guys that you played with that are in the NFL, actually.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Right? I mean, that's a lot of talent to be able to soak in and understand. So the first person I want to talk about is Emory Jones Jr. He's a rookie, okay. Baltimore Ravens. He was picked up. He's a third-round pick, 91st overall pick. You know, he's 315 pounds, 6'6", and an absolute monster. You know, he's a blend of size and athleticism, played over at LSU. Looks like he started 36 games at right tackle as well, too. And, you know, he's got the footwork and pass protection that makes him a really, really promising addition to the Ravens. You know, just an absolute dog.
Right. What do you got next? Miles Frazier, offensive guard, Detroit Lions, 6'6", 317. 40-yard dash, 5.24. 5.24 40 at 6'6". Oh my gosh. 5th round, 171st overall out of LSU again. Ooh, they're bringing some big guys in LSU.
Wow.
Offers versatility, played line position, every position except for center, so he's good on guards, both sides. He's ambidextrous that way, so he's obviously durable. Makes him a valuable player, and he went to the Detroit Lions. He couldn't have asked to go to a better team.
So going into some guys that are not rookies, you know, I want to talk about a couple guys as well, too. There's Zion Johnson. He's a guard for the Chargers, I believe. He's about 6'2", 6'3", you know, 315 pounds. Back in 2022, he was the first round pick, 17th overall at a Boston college, you know. He's really showing all of his excellent strength out there. You know, he's got really good athleticism. I think he's got a, 32-inch vertical jump. Unreal, you know. He's, and also, 32 reps at 225. 32-inch vertical jump, 32 reps, 225. Like, he is a monster.
Next, we got Tyler Smith. So this is the guy that I was talking about because this is going to lead into my other segment that I got going on with the other two. Offensive tackle guard for the Dallas Cowboys. 6'4" and 5'8", so he's poop near 6'5", sorry. 324. Here's the most impressive. 5.0240 at 325 pounds. Holy smokes. First round draft pick. We've talked about this guy a couple times out of Tulsa. Like he showcased, I mean, he's versatile. He can play, and even if you needed that guy to play center, I bet you he'd crap you out some good snaps. You know, he's a true tackle. I think he'll be kind of crazy in the league. He's probably a second year starter right out of the league. He might even get first time reps. He was a big name this past week at a retirement ceremony for the Cowboys legends Zach Martin and Torrey Smith. Team celebrated the incredible legacy of two of the greatest offensive linemen in franchise history. Now that's an understatement. They were two of the greatest linemen to have ever strapped on a helmet in the NFL, like hands down. Right? Both were honored with an emotional send-off by owner Jerry Jones. Announced them that they will be inducted into the Cowboy Ring of Honor. Now, that just gave me chills saying that, because to be a part of the Cowboys Ring of Honor,
oh, it's unreal.
Like, you got some greats, like some absolute legends, guys. You know, like first name for me comes is like Emmitt Smith, and they have linemen that are just absolute monsters that are in that Ring of Honor. Larry Allen, that's the name I was trying to think of. Thank you very much.
Monster. Some of my favorite plays, watching him when they, I think they're playing Tampa, and they throw a pick six, and guys running down the field, and all you see is 350-pound Larry Allen just chasing this guy down the field. He takes, one of my favorite.
Tyler Smith was a 2022 first-round draft pick.
Ooh.
So, he's on the top 25, under 25 list for the second straight year. But, I mean, you're getting mentoring from Tyron Smith and Martin year in and year out. Like, how do you say you went to football school? Like, they got to go to lineman school with two of the greatest guys that have ever done it.
100%. Yeah. Branching off to that, I do want to get into our interview a little bit. We got our guest sitting here, and I want to get him involved. I want to get him part of this podcast. I want to get him, feeling a good time here, having fun. It's a very special guest for me. We've got Austin on here. He's not just a teammate of mine, but obviously, like I said before, he did play at U of A. He had a lot of good years there. He's the guy who put the work in, saw the grind, saw the opportunity where it could take him, and used that to play football at a further level.
Well, he was the first lineman that came out of our program that went not just to a junior football program, that went to, play university football and get an education behind it, right? So, I mean,
exactly.
As a coach, it was a huge deal for me seeing one of my guys absolutely go to like the best place possible and do great things.
I bet. It's got to make you feel good knowing that, you were a stepping stone there to make sure he could get where he needs to go and as much help as you could do. I mean, I always say it like this. As a coach, if you try to pretend that you made a kid or did this or did that when you see kids having success, like, no. We're stepping stones. We're here to help. We're here to do all the things we can do to mentor as much as we can. But it all comes down to the kids and how hard they want to work and how hard they want it. I mean, you could coach a kid till you're blue in the face, but if they don't want to be there and they don't want to do it, not doing anything. Doesn't really matter. And you know that now as a coach.
I think a lot of it, too, like at being on the coaching side, it's the motivation that you give the kids to strive for that kind of greatness. I think that's a huge part of being a coach, is not just being in the moment of coaching high school, but giving them the tools and showing them the opportunities and explaining to them that, you bust your butt hard enough and you work hard enough, you get into the books on the school side as well. And there's the next level that could be, right? You have the now, but think about your future as well. Right. And I think that's really important for a lot of these young kids, to give them the tools to be able to move on in life and be successful.
Speaking of future, what would you say is the best thing that you've brought back to your high school football team, the St. Joe Celtics, as the offensive line coach? What is the best thing that you've brought back from learning from such a great coach like Chris Morris being your offensive line coach for those years? Like, what was the best thing that you brought back to the team?
I think a lot of it comes from just the small details, the small technique details. Anyone can do their research and coach a zone block, coach a pass protection. But I think one thing that I took away from Chris Morris is the long film sessions every day. You're breaking down practice film, breaking down game film. And it's just the small little details. Like, I remember being in film sessions and you're just double tapping the pause button and you're seeing every single frame that goes by and making sure, okay, well, this step was a little short and then that step was a little too long, right? It's the small details that in the big picture is what's going to help your block. If you're trying to make a scoop block, okay, well, did you take too long of a step and then you set yourself out of position? Was it too short of a step and you set yourself out of position, right? Was the step too long and now your feet are too wide, you're getting blown up by the defensive lineman? Where's your hand placement, right? It's like all those small little details that set that block up for success, right? Like I said, you can teach a guy how to zone block and the basic concept of it, but unless you really can fine tune it to the small details, it's something that can help the kids, especially now coaching, that those small details helps them overall understand how they're going to be able to do that, how they're going to be able to make that block.
And I wanted to go another question as well too. Is when did you first realize you could take football beyond high school? When was that first thought in your head where you thought, you know what, this might be an opportunity to get some education?
So it's funny. I remember they came up for a camp up here in Grand Prairie. It was the same camp that you knocked me out in. I was grade 9 kid, really young, coming into high school, and having like the U of A at this camp was it was a big deal for us, right? First time they ever drove 5 hours up to Grand Prairie, brought a bunch of university players off their team, and I never forget, like, I busted my butt that whole camp. And then I won lineman of the camp for that camp, for the 2-day camp that they were there. And at that moment, I kind of knew, okay, well, I was never a good kid in school, never wanted to be there. I was taking low level classes, never really wanted to be in school. But that camp kind of motivated me to understand, like, okay, I got to hit the books, hit the weight room, and bust my butt in practice and try to be the best player I can be to continue, right? One showing by or one good look by a university team's not good enough. You have to give them a reason to come back and keep interest in you, and just that hard work was really what that, from grade 10, that hard work kind of made sure I wanted to start that hard work and continue on.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about the recruitment process. Like, how did that go down? Like, getting recruited to university, and like, just tell us a little bit about that tale.
So a lot of it came super early on. I think that camp that I just mentioned was kind of a catalyst for the Bears to kind of keep an eye on me. And then I remember it was always like, they were always, how's your grades? How's it going? They'd reach out every once in a while to me. What are the numbers like in the weight room, and so on and so forth. And then I remember going into my grade 12 season. So it would have been, I think, July or August that summer. I knew where I wanted to play. I knew where I wanted to go. I didn't want to talk to any other teams. Like, I was pretty solidified and where my location was. And a lot of it was because it was close to home, and, sure. And, it gave the ability for the parents to come and watch as well. But it was a pretty easy decision for me. I remember we just walked into his office, and it was mom and dad, and talked about, what do you want to take in school? What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself? And kind of laying it all out on the table. And then that same day, it wasn't even a question or a thought for me. That same day, signed the paperwork, and away I went. That was kind of it. But then I still had to go through my grade 12 season, play out that season, and then then off to Edmonton it was.
Only lost one game that season.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, the most important game of the season.
Back-to-back years of that too.
Yeah,
that
was a tough one.
To have St. Joe's with 3 seasons in a row, to have 2 losses, that was it.
Yeah,
and both of them provincial final losses is pretty crazy.
Only lost 2 games in high school.
Yep, well, 2 provincial finals.
2 provincial finals.
That's wild. Yeah. Wild stuff.
Crazy.
So I want to branch on this one. So I know, obviously, we had Robbie as our coach for offensive line.
Yeah.
And I know when I went to play junior, it was a lot different from going from his styling to going to a high-end practice. But I mean, university is that step even higher. It's more intense. So, like, what was the biggest difference you think between playing in high school versus playing at U Sport?
I think a lot of it came down to tempo. Just that fast drill to drill, right? You only get 2 hours in a practice. So it's like, we want everything. It doesn't have to be the crispest of practice, but it has to be fast, right? It has to be quick.
Sure.
I think the tempo is the largest piece that I took from it. And I think that's a lot of things that, now coaching, we're trying to bring into the high school, because if you can set them up now and get them to that tempo and get them to that speed, it's only going to set them up for success when they're going into junior and university. I think that was probably the biggest piece. And I think a lot of one of the other biggest difference was the aggressiveness. Like, you're going in as a 17, 18-year-old kid into university, and now I'm lining up against a 24-year-old full-grown man.
Yeah, right.
Like, that was a huge wake-up call. It's like, a little bit of deer in headlight situation. But I even tell our kids, you got to face the best to be the best. You got to get your butt kicked 1,000 times before you can win that one rep.
So
and
true.
You're not going to get better by playing a guy that you're going to kick the crap out of each time. You really got to play those guys that are better than you to understand how to
100%.
be the best.
And that goes for any level of football. I mean, you can look at us like from the high school level, when you see the guys that are going to absolutely destroy a kid, and they just bull rush right through, or they just, get a good touchdown, they just truck them through, and it's like, if that kid was in a different position, or that was a hybrid kid, you wouldn't be pulling that move. You'd actually try to make an athletic move to do something. And especially if you can beat someone, what are you doing? Try to make it harder for yourself. Try to make the challenge, because if you just go through the motions like that, you're not going to get any better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what do you think would be the most memorable, game, practice, like the most memorable experience you had on the football field at university level?
That's tough, because there's a lot of memories that from university. I think the most memorable times that I had was just the camaraderie with the team. A lot of those crappy practices where it's minus 25, the snow is pouring down, but you band together with your brothers to get through practice, get our job done, right? And you really treat it like you're showing up to a job. I got 2 hours where I have to be on the field, where I'm giving my coach all the undivided attention, and I got to work hard and treat it like I'm here, put my work boots on, grab my lunch pail, go to work for those 2 hours, do the best I can. And, when you're doing it with guys that you get along so well off the field as well, and you're consistently with each other, I think that's a huge part of like my memories, is just the overall time that you get with your brothers on the field. I think that's probably, there's so many memories that come to mind, but just being with those dudes is the best part.
Branching off that, now this could be a coach, or not a coach, sorry. This could be a teammate. This could be someone you had to play against. But who do you think was one of your toughest matchups you had to go against when you were playing against a defensive lineman? Who's the guy?
So there's two guys, one outside of university,
yep,
and then one in university. So the first dude that comes to mind when I think the toughest reps that I ever had was he's in the CFL now, playing for the Elks, but a guy by the name of Jamin Pele. He was a one tech and nose, just the strongest guy I've ever went up against. I'll never forget U18's Team Alberta. We went down to Red Deer for our we do like a 4-day practice, kind of a month before you'd go off to U18s for the Canada Cup. And my first rep, I get in my pass set, and I'll never forget him. I punch, he gets under my pads, picks me up off the ground, and just throws me out of the way. And I was just like, this is a grown man going against children. And the wild thing is, like, he was at the time, he would have been 17. He was putting up 225 for over 20 reps, I'm pretty sure. And his last year of high school football, he opted out of playing high school and just went right to junior. Wow. It's like grade 12s. He was playing in grade 12. He was playing for the Calgary Colts.
I think he's with the Elk now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's with the Elks. Yeah, and he is a dude. He was just a massive human.
He was just up in GP putting on a camp with the Elk.
Yeah, yeah, and like even but like off the field, just a super humble dude.
That's cool.
Like a really solid guy for sure. Then another guy from going flipping into the university side, um, a guy named Lucky Daniels. He played defensive end, but he would come in for like in certain packages as like a three tech tackle, and he was a dude. And I'm still friends with him to this day. But he his biggest advantage was he had massive arms. So trying to get a punch on him in a pass set before he got your hands on him was almost impossible. And not only that, but his change of direction where he'd come outside and within a snap of a finger, he's cutting it inside of you before you can even think of what's going on. Yeah, he was definitely one of the hardest guys I've ever played against for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, like when I played high school football, there was a few guys, good, decent guys, things like that. But I never had anybody that was that intense. My 1 year junior practice squad, I played against a lot of good dudes. Like I seen a guy, just middle of practice. I mean, there was a practice fight. And he jumped up and double kicked a kid in the chest. Like I seen monsters, man. Like we had some dogs, I'll tell you.
Craziest guy I ever played against was a guy from GP, and he went down and played Okanagan Sun in Kelowna, where I live now. And same thing, like dude was putting up 25 to 30 reps of 225, like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Like it was absolutely nothing. Like dude was all Canadian junior football every game, every month, and every year. He was on the highest level all Canadian he could ever be at. Just an absolute monster.
Who's that?
Aaron English is his name. Here's the question: how important is it understanding schemes and reading defensive, not just in the high school aspect of the game, but how different did you go from being like, okay, I can ID like the Mike linebacker, I can ID the Sam linebacker, like I can ID the blitz. Like, what did you have to learn going forward from gaining more responsibilities and the higher knowledge of what you had to do?
I think one of the big things like that jump was, you're not seeing high school linebackers weighing 170 to 200 pounds. You're now getting linebackers that are weighing 230, 240. And if you're getting a blitz by a guy that size, and especially as a new guy coming in, 18-year-old, fresh 18-year-old, you're getting a 24-year-old grown man weighing 235 pounds running at you at Mac, coming down for a blitz. Like, that's a hard dude to stop as a young offensive lineman. I think one of the biggest adjustments when it came to scheme was all the stunts and twists. When they're doing 3-4 man stunts, and it's just like you don't even know where the guys are going, right? And really understanding that there's ground rules and base rules to an offensive line on how to counteract these twists and counteract these stunts. And honestly, just knowing like which guy is your guy, right? I think that, and a lot of then you turn that into pass scheme or run schemes and zone schemes, and now like we're going left outside zone. Some of those stunts can really mess you up. You feel like you want to go back to the guy to the right. We're going left. You want to go back to the guy to the right, and just like having you think you're doing something wrong, but having the trust in the guy beside you to be able to come by and scoop up that guy that's stunting or twisting or jumping a gap. And it's you got to understand, like, it's so much different than high school football, where it's, you might have a linebacker and stunt, or, they're not jumping a gap all the time. And it's a lot more complicated systems to learn. But I think that's where a lot of the, there's a reason why those guys at the U Sports level go through film every single day and break it down in slow motion and go through the steps, and big whiteboards in their film rooms where they're breaking every little piece down. Because I think the film piece and sitting down with those guys going through 2-3 hour film sessions goes such a long way. Because when you take that snap, when the quarterback says hut, everything happens so fast. It's so quick. So you don't know what's going on until you watch that film, until 100%. You break it down. And you know, it's one thing I wish as a young guy in high school I did more was break down film and try to understand film more, because that was a big hurdle getting into university where it's like, what is going on, you know what I mean? And understanding that, that in film sessions for sure.
The evolution has definitely changed so much of the landscape of high school sports, especially football. Just from like, I know going from me stopping in 2016 to come back to coach with you guys for one last season last year, like it was such a different experience for me. Best experience ever, but it was such a different experience for me seeing how much the evolution had changed in just that short few couple years.
Yeah.
That's a different game, honestly. From when we played to now, it is a complete different game. There's so many more rules and so many more things put in that, you know, and it's for good. You know, it's a lot of safety things to make sure kids are having less head injuries, less contact. You know, they want to make sure that they can keep these kids going better, because at the end of the day, let's be honest here, all three of us probably got a little bit of CTE from being idiots and playing football the more aggressive way, right? That's just the reality there, right?
I'm medicated for life because of it.
And you know, there's a difference, I think, between when we played. It's more of a controlled aggression, right?
Exactly.
Like 100%. you can still have this similar blocks to when we played. You can still have that violence there, but it's the stuff after the whistle. It's the purpose headbutts you throw in there. It's like you can't take it too far anymore, exactly. But you know, the aggression is still there. It's just more of a controlled aggression.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's like I tell the kids all the time, you know, it's the only sport where, especially as offensive, defensive linemen, where you get to just line up and absolutely beat the shit out of each other for the entire play, and go back down, and you have to line up and do it again. You're not out there running lines. You're not out there catching balls, doing all this stuff. You're in a boxing match. It's a 5v4, 5v5 every play, and it's go time.
I've always said it, and I'll always say it. You get to take out your anger and frustration on somebody that you love every single day. So because you love them, because they're your brother, you know, you don't go berserker on them, but you get to go out there and say, hey, I'm going to put my helmet through your chest plate, and we're going to see who wins.
Exactly. I mean, and branching off to this, you know, like the last couple questions I wanted to ask you, Austin, is, you know, what advice would you give to young guys that are, you know, maybe they think that there's a possibility of them going to play U Sports? What do you think there's steps they need to go, or any advice you could possibly give them?
Number one is the schooling. Like, if you don't have the grades to go, you simply won't go. It's not, you know, Canadian U Sports is a lot different than the States. A guy in the States, like, I hate to say it, but they could not have the best grades and still get pushed into school and still go to Div 1 and still have a college career. You know, but the books, that's the most important piece of it. You need to have the education. Like I said, I was never a school guy. I never wanted to be there, but I knew I had the aspiration of making it to that next level and going to U Sports. So it forced a guy to get into the books and you know, do what I needed to do to at least make it in, right? Another thing as a young guy is the overall aggression piece. And I know we were talking about it yesterday, where it's like, the one thing a guy can't coach is how pissed off you play, right? 100%. And I tell kids on the team, you know, you can be the nicest guy in the school, you can be the nicest guy on the field, but when you line up against a guy across from you, your goal should be that I'm going to put him in the dirt and I want to make sure that he doesn't want to get up, right? At the end of the day, like, a lot of these guys, young guys, they've been big dudes their whole life, right? They grow up as these gentle giants, where they've always been taught on the playground in school, where it's like, you know, you're bigger than everyone else. You got to be a little bit more gentle. Got to be careful around these smaller people. And at the end of the day, this is playing offensive line is the one time where I can be a big dude and, like Robbie said, take out my anger on the guy across from me, not get in trouble for it, and have a fun time, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the one time you're going to be be praised by coaches for being that guy. And that's the toughest thing I find with coaching, right? I can teach you the technique, I can teach you the steps, I can teach you all the scheme stuff, but I can't teach a guy aggression. That's the number one thing that you can't. And that's also the number one thing that they look for in a lineman is how aggressive are you playing? Because I don't care if you make mistakes. I just hope you do them at 100 miles an hour.
100%. Make them big.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Like, it stands out for me. Like, I had a good coach tell me once, it's like, you got to love them up, especially the linemen. You got to love them up because they got to love each other. Because the only way they're going to go out and work as a unit of 5 and lay themselves on the line for their guys is you got to love them. So running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, I don't care who you are, love your offensive line, because without them, you ain't moving the ball.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to touch on one thing before we go. One thing that stood out to me with one of these questions that we were talking about is that you said this is a job, so you're going to treat it like a job. So a message to all you young guys out there that if this is something you want to do in the future and you want to have a longevity future in football, you got to treat it like a job no matter where you're starting out. If you're starting out in bantam football and you've decided, hey, I want to take this down for a career, treat it like a job. Yeah. Get to work and work at it every day.
100%.
That's the biggest piece, like coaching now is, like 2 hours is not a lot of time that we get every day to get these guys ready for games, get these guys progress to a serviceable level. And, at the end of the day, it's like, if you treat it like a job, I have your undivided attention for 2 hours and we keep that pace rolling. We can get a lot of stuff done in 2 hours, but it's up to you to make sure how much time we can get in 2 hours, right? And that's why as a coach, I'm trying to get better as like, we need to keep it rolling, keep the pace going, keep everything to a tight timeline, because if we don't, we'll get nothing done, right?
100%.
So, let's see here. One more one I wanted to ask you there for this. Oh, where's my notes here? Okay, so let's see here. One last one I wanted to ask you was, what was one food? This is my whole line talk here. What was one food after game day, after practice? No more after game day, but like something that was ritual. You would crush every single game day without, maybe it was with the boys, maybe it was by yourself, but just some ritual food that that was the one.
So, well, I know especially after high school games, the big one was getting a Wendy's Baconator for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Gotta pray for the Baconator.
Yeah. And then, it's funny, it changed in university a bit because it was one of two things. In university, you're a broke college kid, don't have a lot of money. So I remember I'd go home and it was so gross now that I think back on it. But it was just a big bowl of bologna and rice. That's literally what it was.
Gotta get that protein somehow.
Yeah. And when we were out of season there, the university program, like the U of A had a meal program for after practices. So you get to choose like a list of like 5 different meals that you would want after each practice. And they had this, what was it? Like a pizza, almost like lasagna that they would make. And it was in like a little casserole dish. And that was definitely one of the go-tos after practice. It's such a deadly meal.
Obviously, getting the Baconator was a big one for me as well too. Part of the same kind of program there. That was huge for us. And a big one was for me I remember being broke as hell and everything. But one thing that still a thing, which sucks it's not, is dollar drink days. And I'll tell you, if I didn't have dollar drink days, I don't think I would have survived.
Yeah.
See, I'm quite a bit older than you guys, so for me, high school meant 69-cent cheeseburgers. So for $5.14 exactly, you got 7 cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
And so when I played after high school, went to Kelowna, and you could go to this Burger Baron, I think it's called.
Oh yeah.
And you could get 5 cheeseburgers for $5.
Deadly deal.
Right? So we would hit that up. We'd hit the lake. We'd cool off after practice because those practices were hot and plus 40 dry weather. I tell you that much.
Yeah, no doubt.
What do we got next?
Next, we're going to talk about what makes a great lineman. The little things. What separates the good ones from the great ones. Not just size, but technique, film prep, attitude, mental toughness. A few traits that we'd look for, obviously, are, physical must-haves, your emotional toughness, your practice habits, your locker room presence, especially I want to hear from Austin, like, what do you think truly makes the A-plus unit offensive lineman that's going to shoot and fire right off to the CFL or the NFL, someone that's going to be an absolute dog?
I think a lot of it, we talked about it earlier, comes from aggression. How hard are you going to play? I think a lot of it, too, is the guys that finish their blocks to giving up, 2-3 yards up the field is what separates the good from the great. And I think, a lot of these guys that I played with, the athleticism that they have, I think, back in the day, you'd look at these NFL or CFL linemen, they weren't running 5.140s, 5.240s, exactly. Right? The athleticism in an offensive lineman has really taken the game to the next level. You watch some pull blocks where, the tackle pulls off as a lead blocker. Some of these tackles are just as fast as the running backs.
Oh, yeah, man. They're 100 pounds on them, and they're up there bowling balls, just road raging people.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that is a separation that gets these guys into the next level is their overall athleticism.
100%.
It's not enough to be a 300-pound big dude, but if you're not, putting up the reps at bench, running a decent 40 time, like you're kind of just stuck in the pack with the rest of them, right?
Squatting a mountain.
Yeah, it really sets yourself apart when you have the ability to be athletic, right?
Well, we talked about it last week with that the guy that's I can't remember where he's going to.
We talking about Will Campbell?
No, the Jonas Savialea, butchering that last name again so bad. But he's, like I said last week, he's got the footwork of a ballerina and the size of a sumo wrestler.
Right.
When you can have those two combinations together, that's where you see success. I played with the guy that he ended up playing in the CFL, which was the Theron Churchill. The best kick step I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've coached people, I've played with a lot of people, I've seen a lot of stuff happen, but I've never seen a cleaner kick step in my life than that man. It was like watching Bob Ross paint a picture. It was just beautiful.
I love that you said it just like that because it is an art. Because you can see some guys can just get it. So you just understand from their hips to their feet. They have to have one motion, and their upper body is could be moving in a different motion. But you can just see those kids that instantly, like Austin, and he got it so fast. He was just just came so natural to Austin. Where Preston, you had to work on it from grade 7, 8, and 9, and by the time you were in high school, you had it down pat, right? But a guy to get that out of a young guy so quick, you see that, and you're just okay, I know this guy. He's going to be big for us in the future because he's got all the things. He's got the aggression. He's got the speed. He's got the, he's got the want to be out there with his brothers making a difference, right?
Now I'm going to say this, and one of the big reasons why, obviously Robbie being my coach, skip rope. Skip rope, skip rope, skip rope. I promise you, if you are an offensive lineman that's lacking foot speed, you go in the gym and you get 20 out. And then you do 20, you do 50. You do 50, you do 100. And I promise you, by the time that you can do 100 skips consistently in a row, your foot speed will increase so much that you'll be out there, you'll be pulling better, you'll be kick stepping better, you'll be cross blocking better, you'll be doing everything possible you can do better with that foot speed. It was one of my things I prided myself on in high school. I was 350, 380 pounds in high school, but man, could I skip rope. I could hit the doubles, I could hit single legs, I could do it all because I had the foot speed to do it, and it was training. It was getting there. I remember when I first started doing skip rope.
And your cardio. It builds cardio better than a treadmill, better than a pedal bike, better than anything.
Oh, yeah.
I think another one that a lot of young linemen need to start doing that you don't see enough of is guys that get into being a multi-sport athlete, getting into wrestling.
Whoa.
That is the number one.
Yeah.
Number one.
Well, I take it back. Wrestling, for me now, would be a number 2. Because I had a kid, and you have him now, Austin, and he is one of the best offensive linemen that I've ever seen in my life. And dude is a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And
true.
Because of the jiu-jitsu and his balance, which is a lot like wrestling, he is an absolute freaking monster.
Oh, yeah. And it's the power, because he has the jiu-jitsu that low center of gravity and all that low power coming from his hips, man. It's just, that's where you see success. That's where you see a guy that can go further and be a successful dude. It's the little things like that. We're talking about what you want to see in an offensive lineman. That's it.
I think a lot of the, between wrestling, jiu-jitsu, all that stuff too, it almost kickstarts that aggression piece for
100%. Oh, yeah.
It forces you to be aggressive. It's, because if you're not kicking the ass of the guy across from you, well, you're going to get your ass kicked, right? So that aggression piece is massive in those two sports, and it
Well,
translates into football 100%.
and like the beautiful part of both those sports is they're a high endurance sport. So you
Exactly.
are, you're going like wrestling. When I was wrestling, it was a lot different than it is now. Like you had 5-minute rounds. Like it was 3 5-minute rounds, and they didn't stop until somebody was pinned. So if you got pinned, it was over. But if it went point for point, you were wrestling for 15 minutes nonstop. You got in between those 5 rounds, you got a 30-second break. I was terrible, so I didn't get any of those 30-second breaks. I want to talk about. I put something together. That I want to talk about today. So I kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning and gave my thoughts on it, and I wholeheartedly believe that any football play consists of the ball going from the center to anybody. It could be the running back. It could be another lineman with a guard around. It could be anyone. So the NFL owners are meeting this week in Minneapolis, Minnesota, on the topic of, there's a couple other things, but the main topic is they're talking about the Tush Push. And it just so happens that Green Bay last minute changed their comments of what they wanted to say to the league. So they're more so talking about, what is it? They're calling it a rugby scrum, which basically it's an incredibly effective way on third down or goal line situations. Like if you can't beat it, find a way.
Here's the thing.
There's no plays out there that aren't beatable.
When you get a team that goes out and they get a 6'8", 350-pound guy that never played football before in his life, but the motherfucker knows how to play rugby.
Right.
I think he's not going to teach the rest of his brothers on the offensive line how to get down into a scrum and absolutely shit roll people.
So that's
what happened.
Right here's my thing. When back in the day when they started throwing Hail Mary passes, right? Nobody had done it before. The Cowboys lined up everybody on the outside, 5 linemen, no running back, went empty and started throwing the ball down the field. Nobody had done it before. It wasn't fair, and they won championship after championship because of it. You didn't see people protesting and saying, well, it's not track meet. Why are we playing track meet out here? Right? Exactly. Like the league is saying, like, it's not in the spirit. These guys are saying it's not in the spirit of football. You tell me another play as an offensive lineman that's more of a spirited play than that one. You're literally taking everybody on the team, making them offensive linemen and bashing other guys across from you and saying, hey, we're bigger than you. Do something about it.
Well, and the reality is, I mean, what do we got to do at this point? Does Belichick to come back in and coach in the league again and be one of those guys that can think of it? Because at the end of the day, there's never been a successful offensive play like this where you had, like, there's years when the Wildcat came back out. There's been years where they had the option come back out really aggressive. There's been years where it was lots of linemen down and they'd shift guys around, all of these things, and people stuffed it and stopped it. And after a couple of years difference, so quarterbacks running around, they've tried to tone that down now. But this tush push just seems consistently year after year after year, teams just can't figure out a way to stop it. And to me, that just means you're getting outcoached and outplayed by a better team. Teams try to replicate it. The Bills do a decent job of it now. They're pretty decent at it. Obviously, the Lions are doing a decent job at it. But again, you have to not have the offensive line. You have to then have the running backs and the quarterback to be able to do it. It's not just those first 5 guys that are making that play happen. It's all 11 of those guys that are on the field at one time making that play successful.
Right. I mean, you got to think about it like a car accident, right? When the car comes from behind and pushes you forward, you're not, and there's a car in front of you, you're not going very far. You know what I mean? Like if you're in a pileup, and which is essentially what it is, it's a pileup. They're only there to stop you from getting pushed backwards. They're not really doing that much pushing. Like a majority of that pushing is because your quarterback can squat 550 pounds. Now, how many quarterbacks out there can squat 550 pounds? I don't know, but I know that guy do. I know that guy can. And again, that in itself is probably 50% of the reason of why they can run that play.
I wonder if there's any correlation between Jordan Mailata and the tush push coming in.
Buddy,
that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. So he was the guy where he was a rugby star who came in, and I truly believe that he went to Coach Stoutland and said, hey, we could run a scrum type thing here, and they worked together on figuring it out. And I really, truly believe that's the success they've had from that.
Definitely possible.
You get a guy like, even Jason Kelsey when he was doing it, and now with Cam, like the biggest thing I take away from me is when the offensive line and the center himself, the center has the ball here, other hand on the line here. Like
Yeah.
The center is in a full 4-point stance off the
Yeah.
line. And it happened a lot of times to Jason where he would actually get called for offsides because they would think that it was the guard's hand down here when it was
Right.
really his own hand moving at the same time as the ball being snapped, and they'd call offsides because
Yeah.
there was just so much going on, and even the refs couldn't understand what was happening.
Right.
And my thing with it is like, figure out a way to beat it.
100%.
Like you said, it's no different than the Hail Mary situation, right? Like, it's going to take a lot of work to figure out how to stop something like that. But at the end of the day, is like, mass pushes mass. Like, you got to figure out the right set of dudes on the defensive side of the ball to basically plug those A gaps up, try to stop that center as much as possible. And I think a lot of times too now, like you try to see, you almost see some linebackers trying to jump the pile
Yep.
Right.
and trying to do it that way. But at the end of the day, why take it out? It's just another tool in their toolbox that they can use. And if like you said, other teams are trying to replicate it, well, why not? It's another thing in the game of football that's going to eventually evolve and get better and better.
Draft players or get free agents, bring players in that can run it properly. At the end of the day, if there was any other offense that you were trying to run successfully, you would go out and scout those specific players that could run those specific things.
Yeah.
I mean,
You'd find your right guys.
It's got to be one of the lowest impact football plays out there.
Oh yeah, that's the big thing. They try to say, oh, it's injury or this or that. There is not one single stat that shows it has more injuries than any other football play.
Yeah.
Not one.
Like, you think about it this way. If they didn't run the tush push, the Eagles would have set the single season touchdown record, because how many touchdowns did Jalen Hurts get last year? 19?
Literally,
Right.
And I would say 90% of them were just 1 yard little bob.
Right? So you look at Barkley's stats, he'd have had 19 more touchdowns onto the 20-something he already had.
Exactly.
Right? That's my rant, but we'll keep you updated. We should hear some information about this tomorrow, so next week on the podcast, I'll bring it back up and we'll touch on it.
Yeah. So, I mean, guys, that's the basic meat and potatoes for the podcast here. It was awesome having a guest on today. Austin, I think he taught us a lot. I think the
Definitely.
viewers out there are really going to enjoy what he has to say. And, really understand that seeing a guy on there that just has another football mind that's a little bit sharper and obviously went a little bit further. I mean, it's nice getting to talk to a guy that had the experience and that really, can talk the talk and walk the walk. There's a lot of guys out there like myself where I coach and I want to see guys be successful, but to have a guy that did it and went and played university and went and did these things, it just seeing those kids out there, it means so much more to have you out there on the field and just being the guy and elevate the Grand Prairie football.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
appreciate it, man.
I definitely, as I said before, I said I had a great time coaching with you last year, and I definitely touched on it about how much I definitely learned from you last year, which was absolutely amazing for me. My question is, we got some slots coming up here in the fall. We'd love to have you back on talking about some football games. We'll get some Broncos stuff going on. Maybe we'll hit a Broncos. I know Broncos play Raiders, or Broncos play Eagles once this year, play Raiders twice. So I'd like to get you back on. Definitely around that time would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, it was awesome. It was a pleasure to have you on. And, it was a little bit different than our usual programming, but I thought it was a fun twist to have a guest on this week and just really talk about some good football. So I appreciate you being on, and we'll catch you guys back next week. Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks for watching.